Okay, so in the last lesson, we actually learned about if formulas and being able to basically have the computer compare a certain value to another value and decide whether or not the student passed or failed. Okay, and we're actually doing a little computer programming here. Um, excuse me, we actually also had the option of the computer telling us whether or not the student received an A. In this video, what I'd like to do is actually do this a little bit differently. So this is one option of using an if statement. There's another option, something called conditional formatting. Okay? And so what we can actually do is have the computer change the way a cell looks based on whether or not, based on a certain condition. So for example, Mary Anderson here got a 93, so she passed the course. So maybe I want this cell to look different than someone who didn't pass the course. So here's what we can do. Excuse me one moment. Okay, so if you go to Format, okay, so Format, if you go down to Conditional Formatting, you get a menu, okay, and what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a rule that will highlight the cell under certain conditions. So right now, if you click on it automatically, it creates a rule. And it says, okay, I want to apply to range, I want to apply it to C2, and it says, format cells if the cell is not empty. What that means is that there's something in the cell, and what the computer's going to do is it's going to highlight it in green. Okay, well, obviously the cell is not empty, and that's fine, but that's not what I really want. What I would like to do is I would like to format the cells if, and then we could scroll down. We have lots of options here. You could have the cell highlight if the cell is empty, if the cell is not empty, if there's something in the particular cell. You can have highlight a date, and down here we're going to use this option. I would like this cell to be highlighted if the value is greater than or equal to the cell that has our passing score, which is H2. So I want to type in equals, and unfortunately here you can't just click on the cell. You have to actually type in the cell. So I want to type in H2, and I'm also going to freeze H2. So I'm going to put $signs next to the H and the 2. I would also like to, I would actually like to also apply this to a larger range of cells. So if I go back up here, apply to range, here, if I'm clicked in here, I can actually scroll through, and it'll pop up with a little icon box, what data. I can actually scroll through and have it apply this rule to all of those cells. I'm going to hit OK. Now let's take a look. So right now, it's supposed to highlight in green any cell that's greater than or equal to H2. Let's see if it did the trick. So I'm looking, okay, 93 it highlighted, perfect. That was greater than or equal to 65. 77 it did great. And we can see that if I go down here to the 61, it didn't highlight the cell. So it did exactly what I thought it would do. It actually only highlighted the cells where the students passed. All right? And in fact, you could do this to the names if you wanted to. So for example, let's say I wanted to do this to the last name. So I'm going to X out of here, and I'll click my last name, and I'll go to Format, Conditional Formatting. So I'm going to apply this, let's say to A2 all the way down to A51, okay? And I want I'm going to actually type in a custom formula for this. This would have to be that C2, cell equals C2, as I have to have it refer to C2, would be greater than or equal to H2, but H2 has to be frozen. Okay? And so this would highlight the names, as you can actually see it did it. This would highlight the names, And in fact, I can choose lots of different things here. I could have it put the names of kids who passed in yellow, okay? And so now you can see that Anderson passed, but Cronin didn't. So you can even highlight, you can even do a cell that's in a different area, or you can just do the grades, whatever you like, okay? So there are really interesting ways that you can have Excel or Google Sheets make decisions for you, and that's part of what this class is about, learning how the spreadsheet can actually help you make some decisions. And so now I know Dolce Cronin here failed, okay? All right. Let me go back to this final exam grade, okay? And let's say I wanted to highlight in red the kids who failed. So I can hit Add New Rule, all right? I'm going to apply it to range C2 through C51. So you can either highlight the range or you can just put in colon C51, all right? And I'm going to format the cell if the cell is less than equals H2, and H2 has to be frozen. And I don't want it to highlight green because I already have a green. I'm going to have the highlight in red. And as you can hopefully see, it turned Dolce Cronin's test score and Dori Divini's test score into reds. All right, and that's exactly what we wanted it to do, and I'll hit done. Okay. Now, I have two rules. They're both being followed. I want to add a third rule to this. And here's my third rule. I want the kids who got better than or equal to 90 to actually get highlighted in a different color. So I'm going to add a new rule, okay? I'm going to apply it to the same range, C2 to C51, okay? And this time it's going to be if my cell is greater than or equal to equals H2, and H2, I have to freeze that. So I'm going to put $ by the H, $ by before the 2. And I want to hit, I'll hit gold here. And I'll hit done. You might notice something. Nothing happened. The 93 stayed green. We know that a 93 is better than a 90. It should have lit up. Why did that happen? Well, the reason why is because if you have more than one rule going on, there's an order in which the rules are followed. And the order in which the rules are followed is the order that they appear on your screen. So the first rule that ends up happening is that is the value greater than or equal to H2, which is the passing score. And then it's going to highlight in green. Second rule is if the value is less than the passing score, then it's going to highlight in red. The third value is, oh, and I have to edit this. I'm sorry. This should be H3, okay? This should be H3 because we want it to be for a passing score, but still nothing happens. So it's interesting, well, why did that occur? Well, because what's happening here is the green has precedent over the red and the yellow. So if a cell should be highlighted in green and yellow, it's going to be highlighted in green. So for example, 93 should be highlighted in green and yellow because it follows both rules. Okay? For another example, 100 should be highlighted in green and yellow. But here's the thing. I know because the way we did this, I know, whoops, excuse me, go back up. I know that if a kid is going to get highlighted in yellow, that means they got an A. Well, clearly they passed. So when I do this, I want, whoops, sorry, I have to go back into it. Conditional formatting. I want the yellow rule to take precedent over the green rule. And here's how we can do it. If you mouse over the rule and you see there are 4 dots, you can then click and drag this up so that that rule happens first. And that rule has precedent. So now you can see that the A's are highlighted throughout the sheet. So this is called rule precedence. In other words, this rule is going to govern over the green rule. So we actually want the yellow rule to govern over the green rule because the yellow rule in our case is going to produce, to say, hey, not only did this kid pass, but this kid got an A. So this now is in yellow the way we want. This is in yellow the way we want. And now we can actually see which kids passed and which kids got A's and which didn't.